Hello, so welcome to another Friday artwork video. Again, I've got a deck flip through of a deck that I possibly featured on the channel before. I'm not quite sure with this one. What I'll do anyway is, if I have, I'll search through and find if there was ever an unboxing, and I'll include a link in the descriptions. So as I've done with other decks where I'm featuring theme decks, or in this case premium decks on a Friday, I'll do a pass through of the deck fully so you can see the full card, and then I'll zoom in and we'll get up close with the artwork. So this is the third of the three premium decks in the series. As I mentioned, I think in another episode, I made a bit of a mistake in that this is actually the first deck they released, but it was the last deck I bought, so I actually ended up going through in the order that I purchased them. I don't remember much about where I bought this at the time. It was a little bit strange because I'm pretty sure this deck wasn't super popular, and so I tracked it down languishing in some comic store or place where they sold Magic the Gathering. Or maybe even at some stall at a weekend flea market type thing. Who knows? But I remember at the time I got it for a pretty reasonable price. It's all foil like the other two decks in the series. So here's the original box it came in, also foiled as well. There's two inserts in here. There's this one, which like the others is a deck listing, and then how to play the deck, basically the strategy that you need to play this Slivers deck. And then what was interesting with this deck on the other side, which is pretty cool, it had this Slivers through the ages thing, which is cool. So it just leaves all the Slivers up to that point in the various sets. And then there's a little bit of sort of background story about Slivers as well. You've probably seen tons of these. I'm not going to open up. This is the standard how to play Magic insert that was of that era. And I've just got tons of those from all the different things they're in. So let's flip through the deck. I think here, most of the time, apart from the basic lands, it's all either one or two ofs. You'll notice as well, because of the utility from the interaction of the Slivers, there's not many other cards outside of creatures, specifically Slivers. So you get this Sliver Overlord, which is a Wooburg commander, or Wooburg legendary should I say. It's a 7/7. 3, search your library for a Sliver card, reveal that card and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. 3, gain control of a target Sliver. So I'm going to go through the higher rarity cards first. So we've got Fungus Sliver, which gives other Slivers, whenever this creature is dealt damage, put a +1/+1 counter on it. You'll notice as well, once we get onto the lower rarities, a lot of the Slivers are quite low casting cost. We've got Brood Slivers, it's 3/3 for 4 and a green. Whenever a Sliver deals combat damage to a player, its controller may put a 1/1 colourless Sliver creature token onto the battlefield. So it's all about giving other Slivers things. And we get an enchantment, a rare, which is like a tutoring enchantment. So whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if it's cast from your hand, you may search your library for a creature card with the same total power and toughness, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. We've got Coat of Arms in here, which is this card that each creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield that shares at least one creature type with it. So the downside of this is if you're playing up against any other decks that have a high amount of a certain creature type, then you know they're going to get heavily buffed as well. But obviously great in this deck with all the slivers. We've got a Rootbound Crag, so that's our only rare land. So now we move on to the uncommon. So you'll see here, like I say, lots of fairly low casting cost stuff. Lots of like 2/2s for 2 sort of thing. So we have these 2-colour slivers that again all impart, so that's the one that does Shroud. This is the one that can be used to return a permanent to its own hand for life. There's a Sacrifice one, and then you get deals 2 damage to target creature or player. When a sliver becomes blocked 1, +1/+1. And these are all the 2-colour ones. Victual Sliver. As you can see, a number of one-offs here. Then we're on to the monocolour ones, so 2/2 for 3. And again, you'll notice they've all sliver creatures have something. As you see, quite a number of 3-drops, several 2 copies of things. We got the Barb Sliver, Necrotic Sliver, so we're moving up the curve here a bit. So we get into Might Sliver. So here we have a 3/3 sliver, but it's 5 in a red, but it does give all sliver creatures double strike. Then still at uncommon we have Heartstone. So hopefully you can see the ability on there. And then moving on to the common, so it's Metallic Sliver. So 1/1 for 1. Actually, this is one card that doesn't do anything apart from the fact that if there are other slivers in the deck, which there are, then it's going to benefit from their sort of, other slivers or all slivers. Actually, it's all slivers, isn't it, at this point? For somebody, it's interesting, isn't it, with slivers, because I should have kept my eye open. I'm just seeing the ones we've looked at so far, I think, are all slivers. Later on, we got to a situation where it was slivers you control, I think. Oh, Poisonous One. There's a couple of those. So then we get a Mead Boy Changeling, but because it's a Changeling, it benefits from being a sliver, because it's every creature type. Some 2-drop slivers here at common. Wing Sliver, Clot Sliver, Frenzy Sliver, Heart Sliver. You can see a lot of one-offs. Gemhide Sliver, I think there's a couple of these maybe, yep. So this is the one that's a mana dork, but it gives all slivers. Add 1 mana to any colour to your mana pool. We got Muscle Sliver, which is a pump sliver. There's a couple of those. Quick Sliver, which allows any player may play sliver cards as though they had flash. Homing Sliver, which has sliver cycling. Got Distant Melody. Choose a creature type, draw a card for each permanent you control of that type. Very good in this sort of deck. Affetto Dredgeling. Return up to 3 target creature cards of the creature type of your choice from your graveyard to your hand. And then we get onto the mana base. So we've got 5-colour deck here, so obviously it needs to fix for this somehow. So you'll notice we've got a couple of the blue Vivids and a couple of the green ones. So those are the ones that have charge counters on them. We also have an Ancient Ziggurat, which is a multicoloured land, but for creature spells. So it does all 5 colours. And there's a couple of those. We've got Rupture Spire, which is quite costly to get into play because it comes into play tapped. When it enters the battlefield, you sacrifice it unless you pay 1. So it's tapped, and you also have to pay mana to put it into play. And then eventually, once it untaps, it does add 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool. So some hurdles there to jump over. There's a couple of those. There's terramorphic, or a couple of terramorphic expanses in here. And as you probably notice, all of these cards are foiled, as is all these premium decks. Get on to some interesting basics here. So we have the full Wooburg here, although you'll see that there are slightly more in a certain colour. You can see we've got a couple here of each of white, blue, black, and then moving on to red, slightly more red, there's 3 of those, and then green is the most. You'll also notice, I think, yeah, it's, same artwork. So there's not multiple art in each of the colours, just 1 piece per colour. So let's zoom in on this. Get up nice and close on the artwork. These foils are actually behaving themselves. I managed to straighten them a little bit. Okay, actually, that's not how I do it, is it? Because I do it this way, that way we don't. We can get even closer. And also we don't end up with duplicates. So let's see how these, on the downside, these are incredibly slippery. They're not sleeved. So as you saw, like a lot of singletons in this deck. And of course, in terms of, you know, building a commander deck from as these decks as a starting point, this is probably one of the best. And I think, you know, from what I remember, the point of this deck started to go up on the secondary market was when Sliver Commander decks started to get popular. Sort of pulling out your Sliver deck with all these nice foils if you feel so inclined. From what I remember at the time, the foiling I think was slightly different on these premium decks. I could be wrong here. I must get ultimately around that period, getting into that period, there were sort of 3 types of foiling. The foiling that you get on the, you know, when you get like a random foil in a booster. That was like one type. And the foiling on these seemed different. And then different still, it seemed like the foiling in those, was it From the Vault cards? I think that also seemed quite different. Okay, so we're getting into the common section again. So this is where we're going to see some duplicates, but I'll avoid putting those out. So you just see one copy for the artwork side of things. It's interesting there was only one copy of the Boy Changeling. That's a really useful card actually. Although, I suppose in this deck, seeing as most things are slivers already, but I suppose is that good when you're going up against other. It says target creature loses all creature types until end of turn. Yeah. And again, we did for this particular product, you'll notice that there was a special symbol for the deck. And outside of the, actually, I think, I'm just trying to think if looking through this whether there's anything where, apart from the basic lands, where there was more than a couple of copies of anything. I imagine the mirror match could be interesting. So move on to our vivids. That looks nice in foil. And the green one. Ancient ziggurat. Okay, moving on to the basic lands. So as I pointed out, there's only one piece of artwork for each, so it's probably going to be pretty straightforward to go through. Interesting choice of artwork. So there we have it. Hopefully you enjoyed that flip through the Slivers premium deck from the premium deck series. It's nice to revisit that deck, and as I've said, I'll include any appropriate links to other content associated with this deck, maybe other Sliver content as well. I think I might have done a flip through of another Sliver deck on the channel. Thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future episode.